Subscribe, like, comment and share to support the channel. Thank you for the support.
The battle against the finless demons starts as Aang stood alone in front of the horde as they rushed towards him. In response, he bends over to reveal the flaming wings that were coming out from his back. Within a single movement, Aang had flown straight into the horde of finless demons in an instant. As he flew past them in the air, the finless demons noticed that he had left behind a blob of light. That blob started to erupt brightly, and soon enough, explosions occurred throughout the battlefield where Aang had flown past. He comes to a screeching halt after the explosions had died down. He looks back at the work he had just done to the finless demons, impressed by it as he experimented with his new powers. He had noted that gathering the flames behind him would give him a speed boost, and that he could use it like phosphorus powder and ignite explosions, but it was sad that he couldn't use it to fly. So then Aang decides to try something new as he rushes back to the demons. He sees one of the red demons being thrown into the air and thought of something new. He grabs onto its throat and thought about what if he embed the flame into the demon's body instead. The demon roars out loud as Aang continues to hold onto it while unleashing his flames inside its body to the point that it could be seen from the outside. He then throws the red demon into the middle of the horde of demons, telling all of them to just roll back to that pile of bastards from which they came from. With a smile on his face, he tells them surprise in a singing tone. The effect of his experiment was immense as the red demon's body caused an explosion that was even more powerful than any other skill he had used before. Aang smiles upon witnessing the immense strength of his new power. He thought about how if condenses the fire and embedded in the demons' bodies, they would become demon bombs. He finally realizes that it seems that thinking a little more about these elemental energies will allow him to come up with different ideas for it. The finless demons that remained soon looked up to Aang, but they simply turned around to run away, roaring and howling as Aang spotted them from above. He looks in them and wonders if they thought they could escape his grasp. A pillar of light appears in the skies as Aang chases the demons that were trying to run away. He lands between all the demons as pillars of fire toasts them to cinders. He stands up and informs the burnt demon bastards that it was already too late. Some time had passed as Aang remained standing on top of a mountain of dead demon bodies. His demonic powers were switched off as he resumed his human form. He thought deeply about how he was originally looking forward to coming to Pethor City with Lu and the rest of the team, and also that squad leader Jin also needed to come here to collect the energy crystal. All these thoughts about them made him wonder how they were right now. He knew that their Helios City's energy core could still sustain them for 3 months, but currently, the road to Pethor City is closed, so if they don't bring back an energy crystal, the city would be in danger later on. Knowing all this information made Aang decide that he needed to find the place that hides the crystal that was originally here. He knew that he must take at least one back with him, but looking at the city in ruins all around him, Aang didn't have a clue on where to start looking for the crystal. He continues to think about how he couldn't just run around aimlessly. He needed to think of the resources that he currently had on hand. After seeing what he had, Aang come to a sudden realization. He could use his wood element energy, which he does as tree branches started to appear near his foot. He starts to spread them all around. Knowing that the energy crystal was the core of all crystals put together, so there should be energy fluctuations around it, Aang could spread his vines to search all over the city and search for such energy fluctuations. That way he would be able to detect the exact location of the crystal. More vines started to spread across the city as time passed. Aang remained still in order to sense where the crystal was. His vines soon spread to a location that contained the crystal. His eyes opened instantly as he knew that he had found it. Wasting no time at all, Aang makes a mad dash towards where it was located at. He sees that it was underground and could feel that the energy fluctuation was weak, which meant that it should have been protected well, which was great for him. Aang then leaps down the hole that his vines had discovered. As he fell down the hole, Aang could see that there was something else under here. He soon lands on the ground and stares at the machinery in front of him. He wonders if this was the system that maintains the B-rank city's energy. He noted that it looks pretty amazing but wonders where the crystal was in this place. But an automatic broadcast message catches his attention. The broadcast states that all soldiers are to guard the energy crystal. It repeated those words in a broken tone. Aang was glad to hear that, as the source of the automatic broadcast must be where they store the crystals. He immediately makes his way over there, not knowing how many they had managed to store, but upon entering the room, something shocks him. Various energy crystals of different colors were destroyed alongside the dead warriors who tried to protect them. Aang was furious to see this sight as he realized that the demons had already ruined all the crystals. He walks past the crystals and dead bodies, knowing that these warriors had died desperately trying to defend the crystal. Seeing this kind of scene, Aang concluded that this was an attack with a goal in mind. The demons that entered here had a goal, which was to destroy all the crystals. Aang thought about how they must have been instructed to attack this place. Compared to the demons from before, they had become much more clever. Aang lets out a deep sigh, knowing that there were no longer any energy crystals that aren't damaged here, so he needed to go to the military base to fund some supplies and equipment so that he can set off again. He gritted his teeth hard as he also knew that he needed to find some energy crystals before he goes back, due to the chance that squad leader Jin and his team might have some trouble getting back. Then Helios City will be in a paralyzed state and everyone will be in danger. So Aang was determined to find a new city within 3 months and to bring back the energy crystal back to Helios City. The doors to the battle preparation station were destroyed, but lights started to appear in the darkness within them. Aang was pressing down hard onto the pedal as he rams himself out of the walls of the station in his new ride. Aang continues to drive out of the city, determined to find a new city for the crystals. As he drove through the wilderness, he knew that the wilderness outside the city has never been explored, and that the mist will thicken when night falls. The desert terrain was a huge city that's been covered by a sandstorm in the past. Aang knew that all these broken buildings were all places that teemed with life before, but they had probably become nests for these demons. Looking at a map, Aang could see that the next city that was pinpointed on it should be in that direction. But a figure appears in one of the destroyed buildings as Aang drove by. A knife appears to cut a rope. It causes a bunch of logs to drop right above where Aang was driving through. He sees this and immediately turns the steering wheel. Aang was able to just barely dodge the bunch of logs that were about to crush him. He soon stops his vehicle and came out of it, wondering what those logs were about. He thought it was the work of demons but sees the ropes that were attached to it and knew that it was someone. That someone else soon appears on top of the log trap, pointing a gun at our boy. She tells him not to move and to tell her his name as she questions Aang on whether he was from hunting. Hunting teams were human warriors that did not live in the cities. These warriors live in small grounds, and their individual abilities are usually extremely higher and specialized. Aang looks at her and could only think about how unfortunate it was that it really is a hunting team. The female warrior continues to point her gun at our boy, telling him to say his name and that she wouldn't ask him a second time, but Aang could only think about how troublesome it was for him, as he never thought that he would meet someone from a hunting team here. He then tells her to not get it wrong and that he wasn't a part of a hunting team. He was just a human warrior that was passing through this place. But she laughs at Aang for introducing himself as a warrior, as she knew that a warrior from a city would never come to a place like this all alone. She then accuses Aang of being a scout from the Silver Hunting Team. Aang wonders about the Silver Wolf Hunting Team while continuing to tell her that he really wasn't a part of the hunting team and that it would be hard to explain it to her. But his words had no effect as presses the trigger. Bang! Went the gun as she had shot a bullet near from Aang's foot was. She continues to scream at Aang, shouting at him to shut up as she knew that they were all a bunch of bastards that were even worse than demons. She then questions him on whether any of her comrades from the Branded Guns hunting team were still alive. Aang could only stare at her while being confused about the words she was saying, but he concluded that it seems like her team was attacked by the Silver Wolf hunting team. So then he tells her to listen to him, even though there was no way for him to prove that he was a warrior right now or whether he was from a hunting team or not. But she wouldn't be able to talk with anyone if she keeps pointing her gun at them like this. Hearing Aang's words started to make sense to her as she finally lowers her gun. But Aang immediately turns his head to the side as he felt that there were more people here. Seeing his sudden reaction caused the girl to point her weapon at him once again, warning Aang to not move. But a couple of bullets pierced her arms through and through, which causes the girl to fall and drop her weapon. Aang could spot some figures on motorcycles from a far bit distance away from them. It turns out that they were part of the Silver Wolf hunting team. One of them had actually shot the girl and were excited to capture Aang and the girl for a reward from their boss. The girl drops to her knees and notices that it was them, the ones who killed her team, but she curses at the fact that she couldn't even raise her arms anymore. One of the members of the Silver Wolf team grabs onto her, amazed that there was a woman here. He holds onto her hair to see what she looks like. It was revealed to be a pretty woman. That kind of looks like Lu. The man exclaimed to his teammate that there was a top-tier bitch who was really pretty and that they would definitely have some fun with her before bringing her to their boss. But Aang appears with a swift kick to the douchebag's face. His teammate remains stunned over what happened as Aang landed on top of the logs himself. He tells the man that he didn't want to get involved in the private grudges between the hunting teams. But it seems to Aang that the Silver Wolf hunting team were truly a bunch of awful bastards. And since a lot of horrid shit had happened to Aang today, he wasn't in the best mood either. So he was willing to give the man a chance before he makes a move. Aang looks at him with his demonic core activated, telling the man to F off, but the man was alarmed to see the look that Aang had. He screams out loud, "Demon!" and pointed his gun towards him. Aang simply grabbed onto it and crushed the barrel of the weapon. He tells the man that he already had a gun pointed at him twice, which makes him really upset. The man could only quietly tell Aang to leave and that his team wouldn't look for him, but a might fight made of wood appears and punches the man into the air. Even the woman was shocked by this sight. The man rolls onto the ground, holding onto his chest that hurts. He then started to question Aang about whether he was a human or demon because of the core that was embedded into his chest. Aang then breaks the weapon into strips and lights it on fire, telling the man that being a human or demon no longer concerns him anymore. The man's horrifying scream could be heard throughout the desert as Aang did certain things to him. He soon uses his healing abilities, telling the woman not to worry. He informs her that the bullets pierced through the muscles of her forearms, so he just needed to repair the damaged muscles. The woman remained timid and quietly thanks our boy for the help, but then she gazes back in silence, seeing the members of the Silver Wolf hunting team being beaten and tied up. She then looks at her forearms and was amazed that they had really healed. She exclaimed that the skill he used was amazing as she heard that only quadruple core warriors are the only ones with skills, and that these skills will trigger unique phenomenon and that they can use those abilities easily. She continues to call Aang amazing and questions him on whether there was a quintupled core warrior. Aang slowly stood up, thinking that he could clearly feel the strength of the double-finned demon in his body, but although the strength of his abilities were way stronger than that of the double-finned core warriors, he tells her with a smile on his face that he was only a double-finned core warrior, and that his abilities were just a little more unique. The woman was still impressed as she calls double core warriors amazing too. She then thanks Aang for saving her life and apologizes for pointing her gun at him earlier on. He tells her that it was alright as she needed to be careful whilst outside the cities. He then asks her if she knew how to get to the nearest city from here, but her face was sullen as she tells Aang that she knew how to go to the city, and that if he was going, could he bring her along as well. Hearing that request amuses Aang as he tells her that they had just met and didn't even know each other's names, making him wonder if she was willing to trust him that much, and so he asks her about the reason why she wanted to go to the city. She answers back to him that the nearest city was the Sanwai town. It was an extremely small rank C city, but it has already been taken over by the bastard Silver Wolf hunting team. She informs Aang that a few days ago, her team, the branded gun hunting team, tried to rescue the town from them, but they all had failed, and all her comrades were killed. They originally had a chance to win, but they didn't know the leader of the Silver Wolf hunting team had recently broken through to become a triple core warrior, which increased his strength tremendously. Her group leader was a double core warrior, so he couldn't contend with a triple core warrior, and that she was the only one that managed to escape. She then wonders if Aang was willing to help her in rescuing the city as she was willing to do everything that she can to assist him. Aang thought deeply about how in his previous life there were already hunting teams that appeared, but under his strict management, they were never able to do such ridiculous things like this, and now he discovers that they dared to take over the cities, making him wonder what the hell was the current management doing. The woman continues to tell Aang that she had heard the reason why the Silver Wolf hunting team wanted to take over the city. It was so that they could the energy crystal. Although she had no idea about what they want to do with it, Aang couldn't believe that they were even going as far as to snatch another city's energy crystal. He then slowly stood up, telling her to take him there as all the events that she had mentioned to him was enough to make Aang furious. Guess someone's gonna die soon.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.